people just fell into this role and they were like, oh, this is pretty cool, I like it, right? And then they built their career around it. But if you wanted to design a career around it, you need to know what's out there.
Welcome to Simply Trait, brought to you by Global Training Center. My name is Lalo, and together with my co-host Andy, we have well over 60 years of combined trade, logistics, and supply chain experience. Along the way, we have seen and witnessed different challenges in trade compliance. We decided to put this show together and call on our friends and colleagues in the business to hang out with us and share their knowledge in all things trade. Thank you for spending some time with us. Enjoy the show.
Lala, we're back again for another great show. I'll tell you, the thing that has been so phenomenal, we've gone to the conferences, we're getting some feedback on the podcast, and I got to tell you, man, I am humbled. I am just, so I would say I'm getting as giddy as a filly on a spring morning here, but it has been fantastic on where we're reaching out. We're just having good conversations with some really good guests and all of that. But I got to tell you, your hard work, my friend, has been fantastic. But we're hitting some a niche out there that people are enjoying our conversations, and they're learning something and all of that. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I know it's been. I didn't anticipate this. I mean, you and I went on this journey just thinking it'll be something fun that we can do and just kind of share our knowledge, not necessarily our knowledge, but invite people that we know to share their knowledge. And it's evolved quite a bit. I mean, like you said, I've run into people like at the conference and, hey, I listened to your show, and hey, that was a great episode. I was on the elevator and this lady's like, I just heard today's episode. Those are really interesting 10 tips for importing. I was like, oh, you heard it already.
That was a good show too.
Yeah.
I got to tell you, I had a surreal experience as you're talking through that. It's like kind of like what you were saying in the elevator. There were people at the booth. For those that were listening, we were at the ICPA conference in Dallas. And we had a booth. That's the first time we've actually put the backdrop up, and that backdrop looks great, Lala. You did great. you found whoever you got to do that was fantastic. But it was surreal because I was standing behind them, and they're going, "Oh, hey, I listened to this podcast. This is good," and whatever. And so then I happened to be behind them, and I said, well, what do y'all think about it? And they turned around, your voice, that's it, it's you, and got so excited. And I was like, whoa, wait a minute, take back here a little bit. But it's been great, hasn't it?
It has been really good. And with that, I just want to ask everybody if you can all just do us the favor of, you will follow us, of course, subscribe to our podcast wherever you listen to podcasts, but also rate us and comment. I mean, we got a really great comment the other day. Yeah, it was, we'll share it. And if I had her name, I would let you know who she was. But thank you so much for those really nice words about learning trade compliance information using our podcast. But thank you so much. But other than that, I mean, one of the things I wanted to touch on, and the reason I invited our next guest, her name is Kellie Kemock, and she's been in fact, so let me tell you, Andy, this is our first podcast host on our podcast. She has her own podcast. And so,
oh, fantastic. This is going to be great.
Yeah. So a fellow host of a podcast, and her theme of her podcast, I've loved it from the beginning. It's on career development, mentorship. I mean, she has a niche with women, women in trade, which we'll let her explain that. But I mean, it's just reminded me of when I was starting off in this career. I mean, I was fresh out of college, and I had this degree called computer programming that now people, I guess, call it computer science. But way back in the day, using the big IBM systems and all that, there wasn't really very much to program on PCs back in the day. But anyway, coming out of that, I remember my mentors, Jerry Terrian. I'm going to do a big shout out to them, the family. It's Jerry Terrian, Mike Terrian, and Susan Terrian. I mean, they're unbelievable. I mean, if it had not been for them, I wouldn't be where I am now. I really do, thank them for all that. But I mean, and because of that, I think I felt this was important show to research and talk about.
Well, I appreciate that because we've all had people that we've respected that we probably didn't go seeking on. As a young person, you come across somebody that actually they stop and take the time and spend with you and help give you some guidance. So in that vein, I will say I'm looking forward to this. Kellie, I tell you, welcome to our show. I am really excited about hearing that you've got your own podcast, and as well as the career development and the mentoring bit that we're going to be talking about today. But hopefully you can give us some pointers here because you know what? Lalo's doing a lot of great work. And I'm the one he's having to pull along like that lead ball on a chain, through sludge or something, and it's like, hey, Andy, you got to get up here and do this. But Kellie, welcome to our show. And I'm looking forward to talking with you today.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me on the show. It's great to be here, and I'm happy to talk about the career development and networking and mentoring. It's something I'm really passionate about. And like you said, in this career, we have people that teach us this role and teach us what trade is, because it's not necessarily something you learn from a book. It seems to be this career is something you learn on the job. And I feel like that's a reoccurring theme for most people, that you learn it from other people. And that's really why I wanted to start my Women in Trade podcast, because I had great mentors myself. And I had these women in my life that were in leadership positions where I would ask them questions such as, how do I advance my career? Or, do I need to learn this? Do I need to learn that? How do I get to where you are? And they would give me advice. And I realized that when people started asking me those same questions, that I had great mentors who had great answers. And so I just wanted to connect is where I was in the middle. I wanted to connect those people just starting their careers to the women that I had connections with that were in leadership positions. So I love to tell the stories. I love to hear what everyone does in trade, because that's another amazing thing about trade is everyone has gotten here a different way. And everyone almost does a different thing. It's my curiosity always gets the best of me when I want to hear about what everyone does in trade.
Well, to that point, I think we mentioned to you we had a podcast that we just recorded with Derry Oxting, and Derry was making some of these same kind of comments and looking at it, and it's always fascinating. How did you get into this kind of a job or the position that you're in? And it's very rare you find somebody that, so rare, it's like really we haven't done it. I had the first person that said, you know what, I'm in the job. This is what I've always wanted to do. And I'm like, say what? I've never heard this before. It was a young guy that was right out of college, I think. But Lalo and I were talking to him, and we both, I think, did a double take, didn't we, Lalo?
Yeah, I know. It was funny how he said, I started doing something else, but I really wanted to do this. And he's in his, per se, his dream job, his dream position, which is funny. So, and he's getting mentored by that other person that was with him, who had been there a few years. So that was awesome.
Yeah, she'd been there a while, and that mentoring, that's when it takes, I guess, someone to be passionate and have a heart to serve others, to stop and take the time to mentor somebody or give them some guidance and all that. But it doesn't mean they should be, like a mother hen or something like that. It's like, look, you can give somebody guidance, but it's up to them to be able to do what they need to do to take the next step. And when they do that, then, okay, you know what? I can now give you a little bit more guidance. Would you not agree with that, Kellie? Or how do you talk to people about encouraging them to become a mentor?
Well, my theory behind mentoring was just to educate the next generation about what the career is, because it is very confusing. I mean, how how often are you at a cocktail hour and someone says, "Oh, what do you do? Do you have like how do you explain what it is that we do?" And it's like it's hard to tell people what we do and like in 30 seconds explain the exciting nature of our career. So I really just wanted to let the next generation know what it is that we do, why we think it's awesome, why I learn something new every day, and then let them kind of use that information to design their career, right? Because too often, like you were saying, people just fell into this role and they were like, oh, this is pretty cool, I like it, right? And then they built their career around it. But if you wanted to design a career around it, you need to know what's out there. You need to know, that you have options to work at a customs broker. You have options to go into law. You can get a law degree and go into that part of trade. You can stay within supply chain and stay close to the business transactions. There's so many different options that I wanted people to know that they can design a career in this field.
That's fantastic. All right. So how do you want to go about this in talking through this? Do you want to talk to the person that is coming up through the career, in their career, and say, okay, let's give you some guidance here on, some of the things you should be looking for, or reaching out to somebody to become a mentor? Or do you want to reach out to somebody here and say, you need to look for those younger or rookie employees or people and see if you can't come alongside them and guide them along?
I have this view that everyone can be a mentor and everyone can be a mentee. You can
Mm-hmm.
always mentor someone who has less experience than you, but I feel like I will always have mentors that have more experience than me.
Mm-hmm.
So it all depends on the relationships that you build. And I've had experience in formal mentoring relationships where they match you up with somebody and then you ask your questions and you move along. But it's those informal relationships that you build along the way that are really going to be the most valuable, in my
Right.
opinion. And that's why networking is so important. I know these are all buzzwords, mentoring and networking, but networking will get you that mentoring relationship that you seek, and networking will allow you to learn about the career and learn about the open positions and the responsibilities of every position and how to build that career. And networking is also going to let you learn, or sorry, networking is also going to let you meet all of these great people in this industry, such as ICPA conferences. And you can go there and meet all these great people, and everyone on, as guests on your podcast, you met them through networking in this field, right? Through your experiences.
Mm-hmm.
And, the great thing is that this whole career field, everyone in this career field, everyone that I've met is very collaborative and willing to talk and to help each other answer questions. And the ICPA conferences, I learned so much just chatting with people. And so that networking piece definitely leads to the mentoring piece, in my opinion.
One of the things I usually try and offer as a suggestion is, and I think there's lots of career development type things, and especially if you have aspirations to step into management, and all that, is to make a point to try and meet somebody for a cup of coffee, go to lunch, have a phone call, at least one new person a week. And at the end, you'll have roughly about 45 to 50 people that you will have networked with in that year. Now, in this scenario, what I'm talking about here is expanding to different spheres within a company, and in different areas. It's okay to try and if you're a manager, go up to the next level, like to a senior manager or director level, and start asking and talking there, or even up further and asking the questions. One of the things to do is to sit down, be very succinct with your questions, but make a list of some questions. Maybe, don't make it a long dissertation scenario there. They're like, oh my gosh, I've got to go. He's like, hey, if you've only got 15 minutes, ask, 2-3 questions, and, be that and go from there. But that's one of the suggestions I always offer is make a point to network. And to network means you've got to develop some kind of a relationship. And so hence making a phone call, hence making time to, go to lunch or I guarantee you, folks in upper management, if they get a call from somebody in the lower ranks or something, it's like, look, I would like to just come meet with you, find out what, about your career, what you do, what do you, some things like that. They'd love to talk to you. And go from there. If their schedule's not is too busy, then schedule it, 6 months out or something, or get it on their calendar. They'll, take the time with it. So, what do you think?
Absolutely. I think that is easy to do within your company. I feel like that's expected, like within my employer as well. But I think it's harder to do, to learn and to network with people outside of your company. And that's why ICPA is so important, because you do get to meet people who do your same thing, maybe your peers, but then also people in management roles, maybe higher levels than you. So that's why I really am a champion for our staff and seniors at EY to get to these conferences, because I feel like at that level you need to learn and network with the people at your level, along as you progress as well. But everyone at every level needs to be doing this networking, not just within the company, but outside your company too. And
Outside of it too.
so yeah, and ICPA is so great because people are there to do the same thing as you, and that's where I got to meet so many different people to kind of introduce myself and do that
Right.
same thing. Hey, can we have coffee? That kind of thing.
Well, and ICPA is a great organization. It is phenomenal. But I will say there's other trade associations. It just depends on where you're at. I mean,
Right.
AAEI is another one that is a good one for it. It plays a whole different role that's more focused on trying to affect change in the importing and exporting communities. And there are some phenomenal folks in that. And then there's specific trades, the trucking organizations and the brokers associations and the aerospace and the manufacturing and the, footwear and clothing. The point being is it puts you in a scenario where you're going to get to meet people outside your company that are in the same industry or in the same function, and you can go from there. That's one of the things we talked about is with at least the most recent ICPA conference is great is that there was about 40 to 50% first time attendees at the fall conference. And what was great about that is when you go, it's, as I would say, you're able to, when somebody asks what you do and all that, you're able to talk turkey with somebody. They know exactly what you're talking about. You don't get the deer in the headlight look, and it's intriguing. And then you start hearing, well, how do you handle this situation, or how do you keep up with all your new parts that are coming in, trying to keep them classified? And so you start comparing methodologies, and it's like, wow, I hadn't thought about trying it that way. I'm doing it this way. And so you're actually able to, if you will, talk shop. And it's the old adage, iron sharpens iron. You're going to be able to be around people that are smarter than you are on a topic, whatever. So it's like, guess what? I need to step my game up here a little bit. I need to go learn a little bit more, whatever.
100%. I agree with you. The learning aspect of this role and learning aspect of networking in general is huge.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if it's specific to our industry, but it's awfully apparent that we need to learn from people who do this in real life, because you can't just pick up a book and be like, oh, how do I
Right.
do X, Y, and Z in trade? You have to figure it out, like, okay, how does this actually work in real life? Because the regulations only tell you so much, and then how to actually do something, or best practices even. There isn't a black and white manual of this is how you have to do X, Y, and Z in trade. People do it differently. And so I think, rubbing elbows with people at a conference and figuring out those best practices is really going to help you add value in your current role, but then also learn what else is out there. But learning is why I think this career path is so interesting because you never know everything. You can never know everything, and I learn something new every day, and that's why I keep encouraging people to join this career path, because it's always something new, something's changing, and you have to
Fascinating.
research every day.
Obviously, with our career, our social network is LinkedIn, right? I mean, where else are you gonna go? You can't go to Instagram and get too much. I mean, you'll get some stuff, I guess, or TikTok or whatever, but not as much as you would on LinkedIn. But if you pay attention and you go to these places and you see like a Kelly, um, I really like this, Kelly, when you did this during the pandemic, when you started these networking social hours. I mean, and what a great way to get people together. I mean, you basically just said, well, we're not going to let this stop us from getting together, and you just did it, and of course that was a supplement or a byproduct of your podcast, but and that was great. I think what things like this is we need to be aware of and look out for, because they exist, and aside from the formal organizations, like the OWIT and the ICPA, AEI, NCBFAA, so anyway, I just really felt that
No, I
that
like
those
that. So,
efforts.
Kelly, talk about that. How did you set up? And what were you striving to do? I guess, and tell our listeners what Lalo's referencing here.
Absolutely. Thank you. Yes. So I was a member of OIT, the Organization of Women in International Trade, and then that's very much a citywide chapter organization, and I realized that if we could use this opportunity where everyone is using Zoom or using these electronic means to meet, we could have a lot broader group of women that were networking. And so when the pandemic hit, I found out about this platform called Remo, which is a little bit different than Zoom, because Remo really facilitates the networking feel electronically. So there are tables. And so you can go, there's 4 people at each table, and you double click on a table and you join these people, introduce yourself, and then after 15 minutes we would shuffle, and then you get to meet 3 new people. And so it was basically just to lay that foundation of, here we met in person, we introduced ourselves, and then we really encouraged to continue the conversation like on LinkedIn, right? Because it's less so of a cold call or someone just reaching out without having met. But once you've met on this type of platform, it's really easy to continue that conversation, and maybe continue the relationships into a mentoring type relationship. So that was really the goal. Is I wanted people that didn't have the opportunity to have these wonderful mentors that I have. I wanted to try to set up an environment where they could have that same relationship, because I found that my mentors were so helpful for me. And then I wanted to bring in the podcast guests and let them meet these wonderful women who were providing all of their great career advice on the podcast itself.
That's fantastic. Well, let me ask you a question. Do you see a difference of networking versus brown nosing?
Networking versus brown nosing. Um, right. Well, so you really just, my goal for networking is really just to learn more about what everyone does. That's my level of curiosity. I have such a love for the field itself that I'm so interested in, like, how is what I do different from what everyone else does? And so I'm just a naturally curious person, and I will ask a million questions. So I don't find it so much brown nosing, except for I'm just peppering people with questions because I
Right.
have unending curiosity. That's my style of networking, just because I'm just curious about what everyone does in trade.
Well, and it took me a long time to look at that in my own career. I unfortunately I did not have a mentor in my younger days, and and I mistook or misunderstood the brown nosing scenario versus the networking. And networking is meeting new people, establishing a relationship, from a standpoint of you're generally what's the word I'm looking for, interested in what that person does and whatnot. The brown nosing is you're trying to meet somebody and manipulate that from a standpoint. You may be trying to inflate that person's ego and whatever so that they will give you a job or a promotion or try and do something along your ways, which is not, manipulating somebody to try and do something in once you meet them.
Right.
It's not the way to do things. Networking is a way to expand, again, your sphere of influence, because you have, again, you establish relationships, you've earned the respect, and you have the respect of others and all that. So I think it's vitally important that way.
Absolutely, and I do have a comment on that. If you are able, if you're lucky enough to find a mentoring relationship, my one of my personal rules for myself was that if I was able to have a mentor, I would never ask that mentor for a job, for actual employment.
Right.
I would always make sure that that relationship was strictly a mentoring relationship. So if you are out there looking to connect with people for employment, then that's a separate type of relationship than seeking out a true mentorship
Well,
relationship.
and again, what's good is as you develop a network, again, you go to these locations, these conferences, and different things, and you see people that it's like, hey, you're looking forward to seeing them. It's kind of like a family reunion. You get to see them. Versus, especially when you first start out, I mean, you're kind of like a duck in a hen house. You're kind of, you're a little bit lonely there. It's like nobody that I can talk to, because you're kind of off to yourself. But again, that networking is so vital, and that helps. Networking, excuse me, mentoring is another thing where, as you're going through that, if you are going to be mentored by someone else, you need to be willing to listen to them, let them hold you accountable for things. But you need to be careful when sometimes there are mentors that are really good, and they have tough love, and they may start trying to give you some advice and comments that it's, hey, wait a minute now, you'll get all upset because they're plowing too close to the corn, and all of a sudden he's like, wait a minute. And you're going to have to come back and say, wait a minute, I need to digest that and listen to them and be willing to admit I don't have the answers. They're telling me something, giving me some tough love. I need to be willing to take that. That still doesn't mean you change your ways necessarily if you feel like what you're doing is the right thing, but you need to be willing to listen and be open with somebody and take their advice. And then you've got a decision to make. Do I act on this, or do I reject it? And if I act on it, then take the steps you need to do. What
Yeah,
do you think?
and Kelly, before we run out of time, maybe you can give us, I don't know, just any last thoughts or anything, and then right before we end, we always ask the question about a trait tip, but we'll hit on that after you give us any of your last thoughts.
Well, thanks. No, I enjoy this conversation about networking and mentoring. Sometimes those two terms get conflated, but I think both are very important. One is less formal than another, but I really feel that this industry is it's super important to have your network because of the nature of what we do. And like I said, the fact that some of this is not in black and white, it's not in a book, it's not written down. You just have to learn it on the job. So really that networking piece really helps you to be better at your job because you can ask questions of your peers and friends, and these conferences also help you do that. So definitely a proponent of networking and mentoring. So yeah, on LinkedIn, I think Jerry and I had talked about making sure that everyone knows that on our profiles, we are open for mentoring, right? So you can reach out to me, and then if you need to, I can get you in touch with a bunch of different people in my network, right? So if I don't know, I can always get you in touch with somebody that is in my network. So yes, I'm absolutely open for networking and mentoring. So please do connect on LinkedIn, and I'm happy to discuss it.
Nice.
That's great.
Yeah. So we do wrap up every time by saying or asking our guests, can you give us a quick 1 minute, your best trade tip? I know we're talking about mentoring and everything, but hey, maybe that might be your trade tip, to mentor. But give us your quick 1 minute tip for trade compliance or trade in general. Like what would you like to share with our audience on that?
Sure. So my trade tip is to not burn bridges in this industry. Because it's so built on relationships, you will inevitably run into these same people in this industry.
Yeah.
And so I would say be careful about burning bridges, and make sure that if you do take a new opportunity, that your exit strategy is proper, and making sure that you have a good reputation. Don't
Yes.
ruin that reputation in the industry.
Right. No, I agree. Yeah.
Kellie, what's the name of your podcast?
Very simple. Women in Trade.
Women in Trade. Okay.
There you go.
We'll put a link on
the.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. We'll put a link on the show notes as well. And we'll put your LinkedIn link, and I guess just anything else that we can provide to our audience.
For our listeners, please check out Women in Trade with Kellie's podcast here, and hopefully it'll be something that will inspire you to be a mentor and be find out some more of what you can do is being a mentoree or a mentor, I guess.
Yeah.
Kellie, thank you for joining us. I've enjoyed this conversation with you. It's been great.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me, and I appreciate everything you guys are doing for the industry and for everyone who's part of it.
Thank you very much for joining us. Simply Trade is brought to you by the generous contributions of Global Training Center. You can follow the show and GTC on LinkedIn or Twitter and other social networks. Make sure you check out the show notes in the description for a full rundown of today's show with all the important links. Also, make sure that you share this with a friend and subscribe on your favorite streaming platform. We really like hearing from you. If you enjoyed the show, make sure to rate and review wherever you listen to this podcast. If you or someone you know would like to be a guest in the show, or would like to sponsor Simply Trade, or suggest any topic you would like for us to discuss, please contact us via email at simplytrade@globaltrainingcenter.com, or you can DM us on Twitter at simplytradepod. Thank you again for the privilege of your time. Happy trading. Simply Trade is not a law firm or an advisor. The topics and discussions conducted by Simply Trade hosts and guests should not be considered and is not intended to substitute legal advice. You should seek appropriate counsel for your own situations. These conversations and information are directed towards listeners in the United States for informational, educational, and entertainment purposes only, and should not be substituted for legal advice. No listener or viewer of this podcast should act or refrain from acting on the basis of information on this podcast without first seeking legal advice from counsel. Information on this podcast may not be up to date depending on the time of publishing and the time of viewership. The content of this posting is provided as is. No representations are made that the content is error-free. The views expressed in or through this podcast are those of the individual speakers, not those of their respective employers or Global Training Center as a whole. All liability with respect to actions taken or not taken based on the contents of this podcast are hereby expressly disclaimed.